notes and stuff, because, you know, I'm building some training programs here in the United States. I would love for you to look at what I'm doing here and just even provide some feedback to see if it's something we could potentially collaborate on in India.
Yeah, definitely. So with Cypher, okay, fine. I guess we'll talk after the presentation.
Excellent.
Right. We shall start now. So I hope I'm audible. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Pragyan 2024. I'm Anmol, your host for today. And I'm Lecture'24. For today's guest lecture, we are also joined by Ritvik from Cypher, the cybersecurity community of NIT Trichy. I hope you share our excitement as we greet a special guest for the evening, a man with decades of experience in the field of cybercrime and cybersecurity, and also a former FBI special agent and now an author and a keynote speaker. He has dedicated his life to protecting people from the ever-growing threats of cybercrimes. Please welcome Scott Augenbaum.
Hello, everyone. How are you today? Can everyone hear me? You guys see the big smile on my face? I hope.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for inviting me here to speak to the university in India. This is such an honor and a privilege for me to be able to share my message with you all and tell you my story and what I do. I am a retired FBI agent. And for anyone who doesn't know, the FBI is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is the federal law enforcement arm in the United States. You probably have seen, you know, all these FBI action movies where they all look like models and they look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but in real life they look like me. And so let me just go in and tell you a little bit about the FBI. The FBI, Federal Law Enforcement Agency. So we are the main law enforcement agency for the United States. Now, when we look at the United States and we see there are 50 states, each state has a state police, which I'm sure it's something in the same thing with you all in India. Now, within each state, we have different counties, which are smaller geographical areas. And in each state, we have multiple counties. I live in the state of Tennessee. I think we have 60 or 70 counties. Each county has their own sheriff's department, which is the local police department. Now, within each county, there are multiple cities. Some big cities have different police agencies. Some don't, and they're covered by the sheriff's department. So there's lots of different law enforcement agencies, and the FBI was formed in 1908 to be the agency that coordinates all of the different types of crimes. Because if a bad guy is stealing something in one state and he needs help in another state, the FBI is there to help. And within the FBI, we have 56 field offices in the United States. We have 480 smaller offices, and there are FBI agents located all over the world. And we do have an office in Mumbai, and I think maybe one other smaller office, and we are invited guest of the agencies of the host countries. But let me just tell you, I started the FBI when I was 20 years old, right out of community college as a clerical employee. I became an FBI agent when I was 26 years old. And in order to be an FBI agent, you have to be between the ages of 23, 37 years old, 4-year college degree, 3 years of work-related experience, and we hire men, we hire women. I believe it's 75% men, 25% women, and we have some of the best FBI agents I've ever worked with are women. You have to pass a background check, you have to be in good physical condition, and you have to be willing to carry a gun. Because it's a law enforcement job and it's not meant for everyone. We have different types of support roles within the FBI. But now today, the big hiring push is for people with what we call the STEM background, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is the absolute future of everything that we do in the world. So let me tell you about the role of the FBI agent in 1995. You know, I'm wearing my shirt that I had almost 30 years ago. I mean, I went to the FBI Academy almost 30 years ago. And the FBI Academy is a 17-week academy where that was the first time I learned how to shoot a gun. You take a lot of different college classes. You learn everything about the law. You learn everything about what the FBI does. A lot of physical fitness that was involved. They expect you to be in shape when you get into the academy, and then you are assigned to your first office. And let me tell you, you don't have enough experience after just going to the academy. It's like you go to college. It's on the job training. So when I show up at the FBI in my first office was Syracuse, New York, which is in upstate New York, and the snowiest city in the United States, 190 inches of snow. Do you guys see snow in India at all? I don't really think so at all. It's a different experience. But dealing with, so let me explain to you the role of the FBI in 1995. It was very simple to explain to people what I did for a living. There were bad people, those were criminals, who hurt good people, those were victims. And I worked with state and local cops, and we put bad guys in jail. What a fun and exciting job for this 27-year-old kid from Brooklyn, New York. I had a gun, I had a badge, I had a bulletproof vest, and I played cops and robbers with my friends. I handled bank robberies. We had no shortage of people who would go into a bank with a gun and steal money. Why were we involved in? So if the FBI would get involved if somebody robbed a bank, but they wouldn't get involved if somebody robbed a gas station, because banks are protected. They're insured by the U.S. government. So I handled bank robberies. I handled fugitive cases. Those are people who were running away from the law, who were convicted of a crime. I worked on drug cases. I arrested police officers who were above the law. I handled white collar crime, which was economic crime. It was such a fun and exciting job. I mean, just think about it. Every day was a new adventure. It was living somewhere between a video game and a mystery novel. And I remember there were certain days where I wouldn't sleep for 2 or 3 days, but it was so exciting. And it was such a privilege to be an FBI agent. And one of the things I realized is, you know, the harder I worked, the safer I made the community, because I really helped put bad people away. And in 1997, which was a long time ago, almost 25 years ago, the FBI formed what's known as the National Infrastructure Protection Center. Because there was 25 years ago, the government in the United States realized that critical infrastructure, which is what? The energy sector, the financial sector, government operations, all had computer networks. And these computer networks were vulnerable to foreign attack in the United States from hostile governments. So we became the lead law enforcement agency, and I became the cyber guy in the office. And I didn't want to be the cyber guy, but I was the only agent in the office who knew how to use a home computer. So by default, I became the cyber guy. And in the early days, in the late 1990s, and I was working all these other cases on the side, we were chasing thrill seekers. We were chasing amateurs. I was getting calls because there were teenagers trying to hack into U.S. government infrastructure. And my job was to sit there and kind of yell at them and tell them to knock it off. and that kind of stuff. But in 1999, cyber took a very, very sinister twist. Why is that? We started using credit cards for online commerce. And that's when the criminals decided that it was easier to commit crimes on the internet than it was to actually do physical crimes. Things completely changed for the FBI in the world after the events of September 11th. And that is when the FBI shifted in focus from becoming a domestic law enforcement agency to an international agency. And we became more involved in intelligence and preventing crimes from happening. Terrorism was the #1 priority for the FBI. Preventing acts and putting bad guys in jail. The second priority for the FBI was counterintelligence. It was hostile foreign governments, specifically China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, getting into U.S. infrastructure, U.S. businesses, and stealing military secrets and intellectual property. And the third priority for the FBI was cybercrime, preventing cybercriminal activity, computer intrusions from occurring. And that changed everything for the FBI. And in 2002, a cyber division was formed at FBI headquarters to fight this emerging threat. And I went to headquarters and I became a supervisor. And my responsibility was building out cyber task forces for the United States to help combat that emerging cyber threat. And I came to Nashville, Tennessee in 2006. And I led up a cybercrime response squad where we were responsible for all type of cybercrime activity for the state of Tennessee. And I retired in 2018. That was 6 years ago that I retired in 2018. And what I want to talk to you all about today is kind of my journey, my experience in cybercrime, what I've seen, how the threat has transpired over the years, what the future looks like. And then we're going to open it up for questions and answers because I want to really hear what's on your mind and everything. But I want to share with you what I've learned because I've been on the forefront of this since 1998. Today, I get hired by very large companies to train employees, to teach them how to not become a victim. I wrote a book called The Secret to Cybersecurity. I don't know if you can see it or not because it looks like it's coming in here. And I wrote a book about my experiences. And that's really what I want to concise for you today. I've been on almost every major cable network news in the United States. I've traveled around the world talking about this. I want to share with you my approaches today and really kind of open this up and I'm a storyteller at heart. So I'm really going to kind of tell you a lot of stories about a lot of different victimizations in the short amount of time that we have. Now, the name of my book is called The Secret to Cybersecurity, a simple plan to protect your family and business from cybercrime. And when I wrote the book almost 5 years ago, the name, The Secret, was nothing more than a catchy title. In the United States, there's a famous influencer by the name of Oprah Winfrey. Oprah has said that if you put the word "The Secret" in your book, you'll sell more books. So we called it The Secret to Cybersecurity. And people would say, hey, what's the secret? And I was like, oh, I got to read the book. 5 years later, I've learned the true secret to cybersecurity. And this is something that if you want to take notes, this is something important. The real secret is that 90% of the cybercrime activity that I've dealt with easily could have been prevented if my end users were only armed with a few key pieces of information. Now, let me tell you, I'm oversimplifying the problem. That other 10% is really hard. You know, I'm not going to be going into quantum computers. Why? Because I don't know anything about quantum computers. I'm going to be really, really honest with you on that stuff. I talk a lot about the human element, because if you don't do what I tell you to do, and I'm going to send you information on, and I encourage you all to follow me on LinkedIn, because I'm giving advice every day. I'm telling stories every day, because I have one goal: to teach people how to be safe and how to reduce your chances of becoming the victim. Because companies are spending a lot of money, they're putting really good technology in, but what are the bad guys doing? They're going after us. They're going after our families. They're going after all of these different things. There's lots of different scams that are going on, and that's really what we're going to talk about today. I retired in 2018. I didn't think the cybercrime problem could get any worse in 2018. Let's fast forward. Let's go back in time. It's 2015, 2016. I'm with the FBI. We're talking about ransomware. Ransomware is not a new issue. We've been talking about ransomware for almost 8 years. I've been telling companies, you gotta be safe. There's something called the business email compromise, which is a way of the cyber, and it's talking about social engineering where companies are tricking individuals. I had a situation, and we're all familiar with ransomware. Ransomware is malicious code that impacts your computer, and now all of your data is held for hostage. Let me ask you, and you can nod, are we facing ransomware issues in India? Yes. Yeah. Well, listen, these aren't, and now companies are faced, do we pay the ransom? Do we not pay the ransom? I'm dealing with companies every day who get hit with ransomware. And it's a topic. I go to companies, I talk for 2 hours about ransomware and ransomware prevention, because they call me, they're like, hey, do we pay the ransom or do we not pay the ransom? When I was with the FBI, I used to tell companies, you don't pay the ransom. Because if you do pay the ransom, you're not getting your stuff. You might not get your stuff back. You're funding criminal activity. So what did companies do? They just backed up all of their information. But backing up their information only protects one thing. It protects availability. It doesn't protect the confidentiality. It doesn't protect the integrity of information. And today's cyber criminals steal your information first. So we have to really change the way we think about that. The same thing with the business email compromise. I just had a company, it's the same stories that I'm telling. Honestly, I'm doing the same presentation from 2015 that I'm doing today. And the business email compromise happens the same way. Cyber criminals get access to someone's email. They read all the emails. They get a company gets an invoice from a vendor. The bad guy is able to manipulate the invoice. He sends the email back to the company and he says, look, just want to let you know, we need you to change. We changed bank accounts. I had a company 5 years ago fell for that for $7 million. They call me up. I see the money gets transferred all over the world. We can't get the money back. I just had a victim the other day. Same thing, another company, they keep falling for this. I bring this up because ransomware and the business email compromise are out of control today, and they were out of control when I retired. So I retire in 2018. According to Cybersecurity Ventures, the global cybercrime impact was a $3 trillion problem, $3 trillion. And I was telling everyone in 2018 that this problem is going to go up to a $6 trillion problem by 2021. And what happened? COVID happened. And COVID devastated all the economies all over the world, except one group benefited. Cyber criminals benefited. And why? We were all working from home. We were all having remote access, and the cyber criminals really took advantage of that. So now I'm telling people in 2018, the cybercrime problem is going up to a $6 trillion problem. And today it's an $8 trillion problem. And by 2025, it's going up to a $10 trillion problem. So I want to make sure everyone's on the same sheet of music. Is the problem getting better or is the problem getting worse? It's getting worse. But we keep spending more and more money on information security products, and we keep spending money on information security services. So you know what it means if we keep spending money and the problem's getting worse? It means we're not doing things right. I hate to say it, because think about it. We have something that you probably all learned. It's called defense in depth, which means that you have to have multiple levels to keep yourself safe. But that's been replaced with spending in depth, because now everyone's trying to sell you a product and everyone's trying to sell you a service. I look at all these products and services. They all sound great, but where do we start? So I want to kind of tell you, I've interviewed almost 1,000 victims during my career. 1,000 people, probably even more. I talk about these all the time. I have hundreds and hundreds of victimization stories. I looked in the eyes of victims and I deal with them all the time. I just had a victim the other day contacted me. And what I want to do is I want to put these in perspective. I call these the 4 truths of cybersecurity. And the first truth is none of my victims ever expect to be a victim. They are all caught off guard. The other day, I had a small business contacted me. And when they contact me, I'm going to tell you it's too late. And you're going to see what I mean by the 4 truths. So I have this business calls me the other day. They got ripped off for $75,000. And what happened? The individual receives an email from QuickBooks. QuickBooks is an accounting software product. He gets an email saying that he's been overcharged in the amount of they charged him $380 for his subscription. So what does he do? He calls the telephone number up in the email to dispute the charge. He speaks to the customer service rep, who's very, very nice, and informs him, oh my goodness, we're so sorry we overcharged you. Please give us access. What is your bank account and routing number? And we will wire transfer the money back to you. He gives her the bank account and routing number, and then she tricks him and says, look, we see there's a problem with the way your system is running. We're going to send you an email. Please click on the link in the email, and we're going to install remote access to your computer. Does everyone see where this is going? He gives up his bank account. He gives his bank account and routing information. He gives them remote access. It could take me another 10 minutes to tell you the story, but after all is said and done, they get into his bank account. They move money out of an overdraft line of credit. They put it into his bank account. Then they tell him that they refunded him the money. And then the woman on the other end says, oh my God, we refunded you too much money. He checks his bank account and he says, oh, that's right. She directs him to go to the bank and wire transfer that money back. But what he doesn't realize, it was out of his overdraft. So he sends $75,000 back to QuickBooks. But he is taken for a scam. He contacts the bank. He contacts law enforcement. But he did not expect to be a victim. Why did he not expect to be a victim? He said to me, I'm a small business. Why would anyone want to target me? Well, I'm here to tell you in the first truth of cybersecurity, the cyber criminals do not care who you are. They don't care about the size of your business. They don't care about how much money you have in your bank account. I know we have a lot of college students here today who are probably saying, I don't have a lot of money in my bank account. They do not care about that at all. Truth number 1. Truth number 2 is when the cyber criminals steal your money, steal your data, hit you with ransomware, they get access to your debit card, they drain your money. the chances of law enforcement getting your money back is slim to none. Had another victim just recently in a pig butchering scam. And a pig butchering scam is a new term for a romance scam. And this individual met what was a woman online. He was in his 60s. He finds a woman. He hits her up on LinkedIn. They communicate with each other. They become friendly. It's not a sexual relationship. This woman gets this man to trust him. And she says to him, hey, I want to teach you about cryptocurrency investing. Download this app. So he goes to the App Store on Apple. He downloads an app. He puts the app on the phone, and she says, hey, look, I'm going to put $500. We'll open an account together. I'll put the first amount of money in. So she puts in $500. Well, let's get the record straight. She doesn't put any money in anything. This app is nothing more than just like a calculator, and she punches the numbers to show there's $500 in the account. She tricks him into putting $500 into the account. 2 days later, she manipulates the app to show him that he made $2,500. Oh my goodness, he says, I made $2,500. He puts a little bit more in. Then he puts $1,000 in. That turns into $10,000. But do you see what's happening? He's giving her money every single time. That's why they call it the pig butchering scam. This is being run out of Southeast Asia by Chinese organized crime. And it's called pig butchering because it fattens the pig up. It's kind of a little disrespectful to the victims. But this guy ended up giving her $600,000. His entire life savings, everything that he worked for, he gives her the money. And here's the second truth. We can't get this stuff back. So he contacts me. I'm talking to the victim. He's like, can you please put me in touch with the FBI? I'm like, so I call my friend with the FBI and I'm like, can you just, and I know we're not getting the money back because besides the fact that when you put it into a bank account and it goes around the world, like in the other story with the QuickBooks, he ended up wire transferring the money to a bank in Hong Kong. We're not getting the money back in Hong Kong. It's very, very challenging, if not impossible. Well, in this case, I contact my guy with the FBI, and he tells me they got cases with victims up to $14 million. $14 million. And so you're not getting your stuff back. That brings me to point number 3. So the first point is nobody expects to be a victim. The bad guys steal your stuff. You're not getting it back. And the third point is the chances of putting the bad guys in jail is, you want to tell me? Slim to none. Okay, because the bad guys are located in foreign countries where we do not have good cooperation with. So majority of the bad guys that we're dealing with today are located. I'm not saying that everyone in these countries are bad, but we're dealing with Russian organized crime. We're dealing with Chinese organized crime. We're seeing hacking groups in Iran, in North Korea, West Africa. Nigeria is notorious. So putting the bad guys in jail is really, really challenging for people. I remember dealing with a situation here in the US where I had a victim who was an author, got her accounts compromised by a cyber criminal. Now, we were able to trace the breadcrumbs. We were able to get some records. We were able to figure out that this individual was in Bangladesh and he was using his Google account. And that's where the bad guys always trip up. They use a Google account. In the United States, we can get all the records with a grand jury subpoena and a court order. So we go over, we get all of his information, and he's using, and this is what the cyber criminals do. They're using their personal email to commit crimes, and the guy saves all his records. You see who he is. Well, we don't have an office in Bangladesh, but we had an office in Mumbai. So I contact the FBI agent over in Mumbai who's responsible for Bangladesh. Now, at that point, the government of Bangladesh was really starting to build up their cyber capabilities. So I'm like, okay, this is good. So I contact the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is our federal prosecutor, and we don't have an extradition treaty with Bangladesh. So there's no way we can bring this guy back. So I talked to the FBI agents, and they talk to their law enforcement counterparts in Bangladesh, and they go, don't worry, we'll handle it. I don't know what that means for you guys, but I had a feeling that, the guy's fingers might take a hammer and hit his hands, so he never did it again. So I'm like, okay, I can deal with that, because the guy was a one-man crime spree. And as soon as we were going to go do that, that is when Al-Qaeda, no, it was ISIS, blew up one of the facilities in Bangladesh, and all of their law enforcement resources got pulled into fighting terrorism. And then by the time things happened and we got everything cleared, they had 3 guys who were working cybercrime in Bangladesh, and they all ended up getting jobs with Accenture or IBM because they figured they could make more money. So it just goes to show you that we couldn't put the bad guy in jail. And I would deal with victim situations over and over again. I had one individual, he got tricked out of, he went to Google, he went to invest money. He pulled up certificates of deposit, which is an investment. He went to Google. The first thing that popped up, he clicked on the website. Well, what he didn't realize is the cyber criminals go to Google and they register fake websites. And he ended up talking to someone. It looked like a real company. He invested $700,000 of his money with this investment advisor for this bank. And then all of a sudden, 3 days later, he can't get in touch with the investment advisor. He calls us at the FBI. We realize that it's a fake website, but he transfers the money to an account at Bank of America. Okay, so it's a bank within the U.S. Within the FBI, we just can't call up the bank and get the money back. We have to issue federal subpoenas and stuff that takes a little time. So we transfer the money from one account to another account, and then we lose the money in Georgia, the country of Georgia. And we contact the FBI office over in Georgia, because we have FBI agents all over the world. And he tells me that, listen, this is a growing problem by Russian organized crime. That money is back into deep inside of the Russian Federation. I'm sitting with the victim. I'm sitting with the family. This individual never expected to be a victim. Why would anyone want to target me? We couldn't get his money back. We couldn't put the bad guys in jail. And he comes, and the family gets really mad at me. And they're like, you're the FBI. You have resources. You need to get our father's money back. If it was your dad, you would do the same thing. And this is what happened with all of my victims. They would all get angry at me. They would all get mad. They would all say, you're the FBI. We watch the movies. We see how quickly it is that you can get it back. And that's when I wanted to put my arm around these people and say, if your dad just would have done these things, you wouldn't have been a victim. And that's when I had the major epiphany in my career. And that's when I realized that a majority of the cybercrime victimizations, and I want you to remember this is a very important part, a majority of cybercrime victimizations that occur to individuals, small businesses, religious institutions, could easily been prevented with some knowledge. And that's when I went on my mission. And my mission was to keep people safe, to teach people that, look, and that's what the 4 Truths is about, because I need to change behavior. I need people to realize that, look, it doesn't matter if you have products and services. It doesn't matter if you're compliant. It doesn't matter if you have the best firewall in the world. The cyber criminals are going to go after the weak link, which is us as human beings. I need you to understand one thing. Cyber criminals will target anyone. And when they target you, they target your business, they target your family, and you contact law enforcement, you are not getting your money back. I know that sounds hard. You're not getting your data back or your reputation. It's very, very hard to put bad guys in jail. I know that sounds hopeless, but what if I told you that 90% of bad things easily could have been prevented? So now what I want to do now is take the next 10 to 15 minutes or so and walk you through the steps. Because if I had a time machine and I could go back in time and I could tell my victims these 5 or 6 points, I could have prevented a lot of cybercrime from happening. And I write about this in the book and everything like that. But these are kind of the things that are very, very important. Point number 1, social engineering is the number 1 tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. And what is social engineering? Tricking somebody to do something they normally wouldn't do. This is not anything new. This has been going on since the beginning of time. This is really all forms of nonviolent crime. You get scammed, you get tricked, you pay someone money, they don't do their job. But today, with technology, it makes it really easy. I'm going to go through in 3 minutes what I have to build a 1-hour talk track on social engineering, and I'm going to cover it in 3 to 4 minutes because we have emails, okay? And these emails are from people we know and people we trust. You're not going to get an email from Boris Badnoff at cybercriminal.org. And Boris Badnoff's a term for US. It was a cartoon many, many years ago, and that was the villain. His name was Boris Badnoff. It was a Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon. So I'm just giving you a little taste of, our culture here. People here in the US get that when I say Boris Badnoff. I don't expect you to. But you're going to get an email from Amazon. You're going to get an email from your credit card, your bank, telling you to do something you normally wouldn't do. So what do companies do? They buy email protection to block bad emails. But it doesn't matter because the cyber criminals are taking over legitimate emails. Email is the number 1 attack vector. Then it goes to text messages and also on WhatsApp. You're going to get a message from your bank. Click on this link. There's going to be a problem. So people click on the link and they go to their browser because they're using their phone, and that's where they get taken advantage of. We get telephone calls all over in my village where I live. Almost everyone is getting a telephone call from someone pretending to be the sheriff's department saying that you failed to appear in court, and they're trying to trick people into doing things. Telephone calls. Think about it with your parents. Would they fall for that? And now through the use of AI, we're seeing robocalls in the United States. We're seeing people that are getting telephone calls with a message from either Joe Biden, who is our president, or Donald Trump, who's running for president again. I had a victim the other day, got a telephone call from a recorded message that sounded just like Donald Trump, telling people that if Biden gets elected, the financial economy is going to get destroyed. So you need to invest in Trump coins. Lady invested $30,000 into nothing. She lost all of her money. We're seeing pop-up messages that are tricking people. I had a victim that had a pop-up that said her computer was infected. Please call the Apple security department. This woman who was in her 70s had a computer, calls the 1-800 number, the free telephone call, talks to what she believes is Apple security, and they tell her the bad guys got access to her bank account, and they tricked her into getting all the money out of her bank account and converting it into gift cards. So the bad guys are always coming up with different ways to socially engineer us. That's the number one tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. And in a lot of cases, besides stealing money, all they want to do is get our user names and passwords. Because all it takes is a username and password to steal information. And that is called the account compromise. Because I know there was a question about cloud security. Well, I got good news. Nobody's hacking into clouds. They don't need to. They hack into the end user. So think about how many accounts do you have that have access to sensitive information. Again, when I sit down and I talk to companies, we go through a complete exercise of knowing what is on your network, where is your cloud-based information. Because in the old days of information security, our information was in the perimeter. What does that mean? The information was stored on site. It was stored in a secured server. We could take steps to protect it. Today, we put all of our information in the cloud, different cloud-based platforms that we store sensitive information. I go to companies and all these different salespeople and finance people and HR people have their own cloud platforms that they store information in, and they are not communicating with the information technology people within it. So if you do not know what to protect, you don't know where your information is. And I see this happen all the time. That occurs in most data breaches today. And it's not the bad guys hacking the cloud, they're doing an account compromise. So when I'm talking to people and I'm talking to businesses, I'm asking them to do an audit to figure out where is their sensitive information that they need to secure. What are our mission critical accounts? And those accounts happen to be our email, our banking, our finance, our Google Chrome, because many of us use Google Chrome. And unfortunately, if the bad guy steals access to your Google account, he's going to get access to everything, including your passwords, your password manager. So think about it now. And I'm running through this really, really quickly. So we need to make sure we need to protect ourselves from the account compromise. And the only way we can really do that is identifying what are these mission critical accounts. And when you do identify these mission critical accounts, you need to make sure that you are not using the same password. I had a major data breach. When I mean major, it was a company that got destroyed that it ended up costing them about $2 million. And what did we end up figuring out? They said it was really, really complicated. And I'm like, I discovered that the person was using the same password for their email account as they were for their cloud-based platform where they stored all of their data. Because think about that. I mean, that's it. That's all the bad guys need to do. So I want to ask everyone here, are you using the same password for your platforms? Because the cyber criminals are counting on the fact that 60% of the population is using that. That is why the dark web, and another topic we can talk about for days, in the dark web, there are billions of stolen usernames and passwords, because that's what the cyber criminals want. And you can protect your passwords as great as you can. I mean, I recommend that people have at least 12 to 15 character passwords for each of their passwords. And every once in a while, I'll come across a guy who has a 20 character password. I go, that's great. And we're going to talk about one more step to secure your passwords. But let's say that all of a sudden there's a data breach. Yahoo had a data breach many, many years ago, and 3.5 billion passwords were stolen by Russian organized crime. Yahoo told us all to change our username and password. If you look at the Yahoo breach, and you look at the LinkedIn breach and the Facebook breach and the Marriott breach, we have 5 billion usernames and passwords that are all floating on the dark web. And the bad guys are just realizing that 66% of the population is using the same password for different accounts. So now the bad guys are able to go in and steal your username and password for one account and then change it for everything else. There's a great website out there. I'm going to probably put that in the chat if I can. It's called, I can't get into the chat, but I'll send it to you. It's called Have I Been Pwned? It's PWNED. Or you might have to look it up on Google. Have I been pwned? Not owned. It's a hacker term for pwned. You can tell if your passwords are on the dark web. So that's why we have to make sure that we are using two-factor authentication on every bit of remote access. Because you know what's going to happen? Bad guy's going to steal my password. Why? Because I'm a human. I'm going to click on a link in an email. I can't help it. I can't help it. You know, hopefully maybe my antivirus is going to pick it up, but the bad guys are going to steal my username and password. Two-factor authentication is another control that is not being used enough, that needs to be used. Let me give you another point. None of my victims used two-factor authentication. So what have we covered so far? Social engineering. The 5 or 6 different things, and within that, there's so many other different types of scams that I didn't even go into that I cover in my book, and everything else, like the romance scam, real estate scams. They're always trying to figure out social engineering. Number one tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. Account compromise. All the bad guy needs to do is steal your username and password. What are your mission critical accounts? Make sure you keep them safe and secure. Realize that there are tons of passwords on the dark web that the bad guys can use. And that is why you need to have a strong and robust password. We can't have the same password. We need to secure all of these mission critical accounts with two-factor authentication. We do that. Are we all safe? There's one more step. You can put two-factor authentication on all of your accounts. Like I had a business, they had two-factor authentication on everything. They were doing everything right, except one thing. They didn't educate their people on a social engineering scam called the business email compromise. So I had this company. They were received an invoice. They were going to pay a bill for $3.5 million. Everyone knew it was coming in. The accounts payable person gets the email from the company with the invoice. She's about to pay it. 10 minutes later, she gets another invoice from the vendor saying, "Hey, Barbara, I just want to let you know we messed up the invoice. Here, we overcharged you by $25,000. Company goes, "This is great." They rip up the old invoice. They pay the new invoice. They go through internal audit. They go through everything. They contact the bank to pay the bill. And the bank calls them up and says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And they say, "Yeah, of course we want to do it." They send the money out. 5 days later, the vendor calls up and says, "Hey, where's our money?" "What do you mean, where's our money? We sent you an invoice. We sent you an email changing the thing." They realized that that never happened, that it was the cyber criminal got into the vendor's email and spoofed an email over. They never checked it. They never checked the bank account and routing information. We got involved. And they wired the money to the United Arab Emirates. Well, we had an FBI agent in the United Arab Emirates. He worked very closely with the law enforcement counterparts in the United Arab Emirates. we were able to secure $600,000. To me, I think it's a great day. But how do I call a company up and say, hey, you didn't lose 3.5 million, you only lost 2.9. And then when they got access to the money, they'd found out that the money went back to the country of Romania. And from there, we sent information. And by the time we figured it out, money was long gone. So if there's one, so these are the foundations that we really need to know, because that really counts about 90% of what I deal with. And every day I'm still dealing with victims. And the worst part is I can't get their money back. I can't put the bad guys in jail. It's a little too late for me to tell them that, hey, look, if you just would have done this, you wouldn't have been a victim. But today, and that's why it's so important for you all to realize this as your studies, as you go into the world of information security, because there's a lot of opportunities for people. But remember, the more we're starting to spend money on technical solutions, and I agree, and you're going to learn all about the different types of products, the EDRs, the MDRs, the XDRs, the firewalls, the endpoint security. You could have all of that, but if you don't do what I tell you to do for free, which we just covered, you're still going to become a victim. So my message is a message of empowerment, and that's why I call it the cyber secure mindset. That these are the points that I want you to take, and we're going to send you a handout. I'm going to give you information, or my assistant Taru is going to put it up in the chat on where you can go to get this information. And I want you to incorporate that into your daily life. And what we need to do is, before we can keep companies safe and keep universities safe, we need to keep ourselves safe. We need to keep our loved ones safe, and especially our parents. And with that, I want to open this up, and I want to really take a couple of questions. I want to get some feedback on what I've said. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you're seeing, and is this an approach that might sound like it could work? And with that, I'm going to have a sip of my coffee.
Thank you for the lecture, Scott. Actually, a story of serving during the FBI with a 26-year-old in a tender age with a gun on one head and a badge wearing it actually gave me goosebumps. So what I wanted to ask was, as you have mentioned during the lecture, the loss in the economy due to cybercrime have increased from 2 million to 6 million and currently at the state of 8 million. So this can be attributed to the evolution of AI and IoT. But we also should both agree on the fact that there has been an advancement in technology. So what corrective measures can be done to reduce the loss due to cybercrime?
Great question. If I knew the complete answer to that, I'd be a millionaire right now, as we all try to collectively solve that problem. Remember, I'm only the cybercrime problem keeps going up. We all know that, but we're not doing the basic things. So let's talk about the networking things. Are you all studying something called the core critical controls? Have you heard of those? Or the Australians have it. It's the Australian Signal Defense 8. So those are two things, and we can have another discussion about that, and we can walk through these technical controls. These are things that I don't really see companies really finding. Because let me tell you, if you do everything that I tell you to do, that's great, but you have to take the technical measures, because we have a lot of IoT. We have a lot of advanced computer systems. And one of the first things, and let's kind of talk about this, and again, this could go off on a tangent for another hour or so, so I'm going to really try to give you the quick view of this. One of the things that happens on most network attacks occur because there's a vulnerability. Vulnerabilities happen because the software, the firmware, the operating system, the applications, the cyber criminals have found a vulnerability in them. because the cyber criminals are always banging away. Because today, unfortunately, when we're releasing these products and we're not doing secure coding, okay, we're not making things secure. We're building things for speed, especially with IoT devices. We need a device, and think about it in the world of medical technology, you know, to implants and our things. The scientists just want to keep people safe. Nobody's thinking that cyber criminals want to exploit these devices. So what we end up seeing now is most companies, you know, patching is very, very hard. Finding vulnerabilities is very, very hard. But if we don't know what's on our network, how can we patch what's on our network? So I see a lot of times within companies, people are taking their personal laptops that don't have endpoint protection, they're hooking them into their corporate network, and as a result, that personal device is getting compromised. The cyber criminals are getting into that personal device and using that as a foothold into the rest of the organization. So that's where really that I see things are going today, because now everybody wants admin rights on their computer. Well, if anyone has admin rights on their computer, people are going to, you know, that means you can download any kind of software you want on your computer. And that software might not be supported. And now we see a lot of supply chain attacks. We're seeing a lot of products, a lot of cameras from China. A lot of things have to beacon out to China for firmware. We don't know what's behind that. So that's always going to end up becoming a challenge for most of us. And with, you know, what we used to call here in the United States, something called Moore's Law, which means that the advances in technology are doubling every 18 months. Today with AI, I think they're doubling every 6 weeks. We keep getting better and better, but nobody's really thinking about security. And think about the amount of technology that we have in our phone today. I mean, we're using our Android devices. We're using it for banking. We're using it for finance. In the United States, we're using it for apps that are allowing us to control the air conditioning and heating systems within our house or within hospitals. And we're not stopping this technology. The technology is advancing. It's saving lives. But remember, at the same time, the cyber criminals are taking advantage. So the easier we make technology for ourselves, because I talk to companies all the time, I tell them you need to put two-factor authentication, and they go, that takes too much time. I'm like, it might take you an extra 5 seconds, but all everyone wants, think about it on your phone, all you want to do is push a button and get access to your technology. So that's why we need to change the mindset.
Hello, Scott. Anmol here again. Thank you for that illuminating look, illuminating, if not scary, look at the problem of cybercrime and how pernicious it has become. We have a lot of questions rolling in from the YouTube chat as well. So I'll try and throw one of those at you. There's a very simple one. For the average user, what privacy practices should they adopt on social media platforms to have like a minimal digital footprint or to have more data privacy?
It's a good one. You know, that, I mean, we're living in an age where people are oversharing. It's that simple. You know, everyone wants to have 1 million friends. Everybody wants to have this very, very wide digital footprint. When we're going on Facebook and we're going on Instagram, we're telling people where we are at any given time. That's a very, very challenging thing. I think we're living in the world of oversharing. I see it happen all the time. I look at my kids, okay? I don't worry. I have an 18-year-old son and a 21-year-old son. All of a sudden, I remember a couple of years ago, they all use Snapchat. Do you use Snapchat in India? Is that available? Okay. My son pulls up Snapchat, and there's a map on Snapchat, and I could see where all of his friends are located on the map. I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, you're just allowing it. Like, I don't want everyone to know where I am. I mean, what if I had a daughter or something and they're like, Dad, oh, come on, man, you're just old. We're all on here. We all know where everybody is. Now, think about that if you're a cyber criminal, or you're someone who's stalking someone. So there's really kind of, when we're talking about privacy, and everyone's all concerned and up in arms in privacy, I want to challenge all of you. Where are your privacy settings on all of your social media devices? Are you allowing everybody to look at that? Because people get furious. They're like, well, Google's collecting way too much information about myself. That's really, really a kind of a personal choice. When I'm looking at all the apps, and you just get sucked into it. You want access to that information, and in exchange, people are able to see what your shopping habits are and what you're doing. Am I guilty of it? Yeah, I'm guilty of it myself. It's really kind of working that balance out on the personal preference. And the more we talk, and I know you said I gave a scary view of cyber. It shouldn't be scary if 90% of it could be easily prevented. I want to scare you into taking action. So I hope that answered your question a little bit.
So, Scott, actually, there was a recent news that many of the journalists and media reporters are being attacked by a virus named as zero-click virus, which simply means, according to the word, that you have been subjected to the virus without even clicking a random website or site. And also, there has been increase in the usage of deep fake videos and voice cloning through AI, through social media platforms and film industry. So, what is your opinion or say on it?
My opinion, it's bad, but what are we going to do? You have to really, really be careful. Okay. I am sure that I'm going to go to websites, I'm going to get compromised. That's why, to me, the most important thing to do is to secure your platforms with two-factor authentication. I know that might sound simplified, but as regular people, as regular individuals, we need to be able, I'm going to click on a link. What am I trying to do right now? I'm trying to keep my money safe. That's my number one priority in the world, okay? I want to keep my finances safe. I want to make sure that if I have a camera in my house, that the bad guy is not going to get my username and password. How am I going to prevent that? I'm going to prevent that through the two-factor authentication. Those are the very, very simple and basic steps that we could take. The deep fake videos, boy, that's going to get a little crazy. I mean, artificial intelligence is so amazing. The things you can do on ChatGPT. I know, like, I was just reading something the other day that ChatGPT is coming out with a new video platform where in a pretty soon it's going to be available to all of us, that we can do a deep fake of someone just continuing and talking. That's going to be really challenging. What do I do in my own family and everything? I'm like, look, here's a code word. Just, we know it. No matter what I do, no matter what I ever ask for, if I'm not going to tell you this code word, it's not me. Okay? So just realize that. I know I'm being a little overreactive here, but it's the same thing with my kids, the same thing, because we're getting a lot of people who are calling up. We're getting a lot of extortion. Like here in the United States, a big thing is you're getting a telephone call saying that your kids have been kidnapped. and they're using some kind of tone or something like that. So that's why we have to have that cyber secure mindset. We have to be aware of what is going on in the world of the deep fakes and using artificial intelligence. Because today you can go to ChatGPT, you can scour a website, you can get all the emails off of the website, and you can craft a perfect email that looks like it's coming from the director of HR to an employee saying, please click on this link and update yourself. Knowledge is half the battle. That's what a cyber secure mindset is all about.
Hello, Scott. Can you hear me?
Hello there.
Yeah, hi. I hope I'm visible. Right. So you have authentication options like Google OAuth or OIDC, and they work on the single sign-on model, which states that basically you want to decrease the number of times you insert your password. So you insert your Gmail password once, and you can use that to log into various other websites like, maybe educational platforms or other platforms. So this kind of goes in, it kind of conflicts with your ideology of having two-factor authentication for most of your passwords. So what are your thoughts on this? And do you think that we should, instead of using like Google OAuth, we should have a more centralized system, maybe something from our governments or another method altogether?
Well, let me tell you one thing. In the United States, we're not letting the government make decisions because the government completely doesn't, as a government employee. Single sign-on is a great thing, but single sign-on is also a single point of failure.
Yeah.
So let me tell you one thing. If today there is anyone here who is, and let me tell you, I use Google as a single sign-on, but if you were using Google today, and you do not have two-factor authentication turned on your Google account, that means cybercriminal gets access. All he needs to do is, and let's just say that password's on the dark web, or you're using it. So let's say let's say Marriott has a breach, and you use the same password for Marriott as you do for Google. Bad guy logs into your Google. Now he's using Google as a single sign-on to get into all of your other platforms. Now he's also getting into your Chrome browser because a lot of us, let's be real, we save passwords. Now from that one thing, instead of single sign-on, it's a single disaster. So am I saying that we don't use that as a single sign-on? Absolutely not. I'm saying secure it. Turn on two-factor authentication. Get the Authenticator app, because if you do not do it, and I'm gonna throw the question at you: what happens if you don't do that? If any of our users don't do that, what could happen to them?
Like you're saying, disaster.
Disaster.
True.
And how do we avert the disaster? We turn on the two-factor authentication. Will the cyber criminals one day get access to it? Maybe. But only 10% of Google users are using two-factor authentication. Remember, what we're trying to do is prevent the low-level cyber criminals. Listen, if the Chinese government or the Russian government or the Iranian government wants to target Scott Augenbaum, I hate to say it, they're going to get access to me. They're going to get access to me. What am I going to do? I don't have that skill set, but I want to prevent the young cyber criminals who are on the dark web, who are going over and getting all those usernames and passwords. That's the basic stuff, because if we can't get that right, we don't have the ability to look into the future to build solutions, because we're going to be too busy because our parents are going to get their life savings wiped out, and our friends and our family members. That's my simple message. And I try to make it, and I'm trying to put it into a very simplistic messaging. Because if I tell you that you need to do it, you're going to go, okay. Maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't do it. But let me get my message here straight. For anyone here who is using Google and does not have two-factor authentication, I want you to remember these things. Bad guys are going to steal your money. Truth two, you're not getting it back. Nobody's going to jail. And when you go report it to law enforcement, somebody's going to probably tell you this could have been prevented. That's it. That's the mindset that I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah,
You know,
thank you
we
for
can
your
try to
answer.
build, we can try to build a better system. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but let's do this stuff first. People always say, Scott, when are you going to talk about advanced topics? I go, once I can get 100% saturation with two-factor authentication, I'll start taking more cyber classes. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
So, Scott, leaving all the technical things aside for a moment, can you provide some insights into the future career prospects and scope available for college students interested in the domain of cybersecurity?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Can you provide some insights into the future career prospects and scope available for college students who are interested in the domain of cybersecurity?
Absolutely. I can't speak for you all in India, but in the United States, we have a cybersecurity skills gap. What does that mean? There are currently, and I'll send you an article, according to one survey, there are 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the United States. And unfortunately now in the United States, all the kids want to become influencers and nobody wants to take STEM classes. I mean, my son is taking mechanical engineering, which Theroux told me that that's not a good fit. You know, I'm trying to get him to go into computer engineering, but the future is very, very bright for that. And that's why it's so important that, you know, and that's why I love doing these things, especially, you know, helping whoever I can, you know, to really build your portfolio of life experiences, you know, to really take those skills, because we are so short. The companies here, especially in Nashville, Tennessee, it's so hard. I mean, with all the tech companies, I mean, they're just dying for people with cybersecurity skill sets, especially in the world of networking. In the old days, we used to say, you know, just get that computer science degree. But now I would say, look, the more you can understand about computer networkings and computer security, you will never be unemployed with those types of skill sets. So let me ask you all a question. Now it's my turn to ask questions here. Okay. So what keeps you all up at night? What are you seeing in India? What are the victimizations that you all are dealing with? I'm sharing my stories with you. What are you seeing here? What are the attacks looking like over there?
Well, as you described, it mostly targets the elderly, and there are obviously, so in India, we have something called the OTP, which means the one-time password. So you get those while you're doing a banking transaction or something of that sort. And elderly people usually get these phone calls from someone who's ostensibly a bank manager or their relative, and they're asking for these OTPs. So in India, the campaign has mostly been about informing people who are at risk. And these could be not just the elderly, like even young people, as you said. So it's more or less the same case here in India as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's a problem because, you know, you can do the one-time password, but let's think about what we talked about, social engineering. You know, now you're going to call someone up, you're going to tell them to send money and that stuff. So it's really trying to, you know, change that. What else are you guys seeing in India?
Well, you might have heard of a lot of scam call centers operating out of India, Nigeria, other parts of Southeast Asia. and they obviously also masquerade in some sort of authority, and you have the good old phishing scams as well. So all sorts of varieties of scams. So as we say, like India being a developing nation is also catching up in terms of cybercrimes as well. So,
Yeah, it's a global problem. We're all facing it together, and we're all trying to really come up with. We're really trying to come up with different types of solutions and those things, but we all have to work together as a global community.
yeah, I have to say that it's genuinely very nice to see someone with your experience putting all of their time into this. And I hope that you go around helping people and informing them so that they feel empowered to deal against cyber threats. And I would also recommend the audience who are watching this to check out your book. I believe it was called The Secret of Cybersecurity or something. So I would recommend my friends here and the audience to check out your book as well. And I'm afraid we are short on time. So do you have something to add?
Nothing. I just want to say that this was just absolutely a privilege to speak with you all. Email me if anyone wants to, we can set up another Zoom and, have a nice question and answer session. If anyone is interested in the next couple of weeks, please follow me over on LinkedIn to get some more information. But I'm always putting videos out. I'm always sharing these stories. I'm building different talk tracks for companies on different things. I'm working on one project now to help, because you got to simplify the stories. If we just start sitting here and I'm trying to talk to the elderly about one-time passwords and this, I need to work more on telling the stories to get people to do it, because we all know we need two-factor authentication, but it's not until we hear the story on why we need it. So those are the things that I'm working on, is I'm building training out for companies, and that's how I make my living, that I end up, getting hired by different organizations and traveling and, doing these types of talks for their employees. But it was absolutely a pleasure. I look forward to collaborating with you all again and seeing how we can put our heads together and empower people to keep the world safe.
So thank you so much, Scott. I'm sure our audience feel much more empowered to deal with cyber threats after listening to you, as do I. I hope you continue informing and helping people all over the world. It was a genuine pleasure to have you over us for Pragyan.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope I talked not too slow for all of you today.
Oh, sir, it was perfectly fine.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Well, I do hope everyone has a good evening today.
Thank you, sir. Good day to you as well.
Okay. I look forward to hearing from you again. Signing off. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.